All right, folks, I see people are starting to join in, so I appreciate it. We're starting just a touch early here, but we're gonna give people just till the top of the hour to get logged in and get going. And I appreciate you taking your time to join us at this Ask Mayfield Anything, so our monthly webinar series. And I'm really excited to talk with our panel today, getting into testing and just kind of talking about testing on our PV systems, our solar plus storage systems, and so kind of how we're approaching that, educating the industry, and kind of what those needs are around. So as you're logging in, I appreciate it again. As we're going, we highly encourage Q&A. So we really want to hear your questions. The intention here is to hear from you and be able to interact with you. So with that, we ask that you use the Q&A feature, the questions and answer feature in the Zoom call, not the chat. It's just a lot easier for us to manage and kind of see those. They very often get lost in the chat. So feel free to ask those. I'll keep an eye on those as we're going. We can try and answer them in real time as we're going along. And then, of course, at the end, if we still have extra time, we'll spend some time going through all those. So that kind of sets us up for what we're looking at here today. So real quick, just want to do some introductions. My name is Ryan Mayfield. I'm the founder of Mayfield Renewables. Started the company in 2007, and we've been doing these Ask Mayfield Anything webinars for a number of years now. And the idea is it's kind of an excuse for me to be able to talk with smart people, be able to get on calls and be able to talk about some important subjects. So thanks again for joining us. The intro for Mayfield Renewables, if you don't know who we are a engineering and consultancy firm. And so we do a lot of work with EPCs. We do engineering projects all the way from feasibility studies through construction set and as-built sets. And one of the missions that we have as a company is doing education. And so I've been educating my entire career that I've owned the company. And so I've been doing a lot of code trainings. And so bringing resources like this out to people is an important part of what we do and who we are. So that is a big part of what we do day in and day out. So I want to introduce today's guests. I appreciate everybody taking the time and energy to join us. I'm going to start with Robert. Robert Cross is a principal at Outfit. Outfit is a partner of Mayfield's. We do a lot of work together. We've been working together for many years at this point, and we will show some of the work that we've done with Outfit to help give you an idea of what they are. But yeah, Robert, why don't you go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself and let people know about Outfit.
Thanks, Ryan. Yes, Outfit's the Clean Tech Marketing Agency. It's my second company. We are focused on working with project developers, manufacturers, and service providers, and do a significant amount of technical marketing. In this instance, we did a fair amount of 3D modeling, which comes up in the online course that we're going to show today, and enjoy working with Ahmed at Megger. We've been doing that for quite a while, and it's good to see Chris. So should be a good conversation today.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and then next up we have Ahmed El-Rasheed from Megger. And so Ahmed is the industry director for renewables. And we've been working, Mayfield and Outfit collectively, been working with Megger for also a number of years. And so a lot of people know the name Megger, and we wanted to have Ahmed come on and kind of talking about from a tool testing manufacturer perspective, kind of helping educate the industry. That's something that Megger puts a lot of emphasis on as well. So Ahmed, you want to take a moment and introduce kind of your role and Megger's perspective here?
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian, and thank you for everyone organizing and hosting this conversation we're having today, and thank you to all the attendees. As Ryan said, my name is Ahmed El-Rasheed. I work for Megger as Industry Director for Renewables. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada, but my responsibility is global, and it's our responsibility is about putting together the strategy and implementing the strategy for Megger to better serve the renewables market. solar in particular. Some of the things that I've been doing, almost coming up to 10 years with Megger. I've been involved with a lot of new product developments, identifying market needs for a particular type of test and coming up with new designs and introducing new products into the market. And primarily it's about making sure that installation is safe and making sure that the energy is being produced as efficiently as possible. That's what our tools are all about. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. And yeah, as I mentioned, we've been working together for a while, and Megger is very much out there trying to, give resources to the industry, and so been doing it with the electrical industry, and now really getting into working with the renewables industry as well. So appreciate your time. And then Chris Grablutz we have from Tri-Force Energy, COO and co-founder. And so Chris and we met, gosh, guess it was a year and a half or so ago. I forget exactly at this point, but Chris and Tri-Force, provide O&M services primarily on the East Coast. You're based out of New Jersey, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed is getting to know Chris and co-founder Jesse. The ability to work with you guys and trying to make things better for the industry, quite honestly. And so you guys have been very generous with your time and trying with what you're doing. But Chris, why don't you, I guess, give your background a little bit and kind of what Tri-Force is doing and, kind of your perspective on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan. And it's fantastic to be part of the conversation today alongside with Robert and Ahmed. We've had a great opportunity to work with everyone here in the past, and really looking forward to the discussion again today. So again, I'm Chris Grablutz, one of the co-founders of Tri-Force Energy. Going into my 14th year in the solar industry. I've made a progression from design engineering to construction and project management, and really focused on a lot of quality efforts around the construction and project management over the course of the beginning and middle of my career. And the natural last progression was moving over into the operating phase of PV systems and in O&M. And so Tri-Force Energy is based here in New Jersey. We're a technical field services provider that focuses on three major areas under inspections, testing, and maintenance. And so we get involved with projects as early as construction and doing quality control inspections. We provide testing both to commission sites into operation, but then also bespoke testing for troubleshooting and benchmarking throughout the lifespan of a system. And then maintenance happens to be the largest part of our business. And so we conduct preventative maintenance inspections on commercial and utility scale PV assets, as well as service and troubleshooting that comes along with that. So I've had just a fantastic time and a really unique pleasure to both design systems and see them age over the course of 14 years. And so learn from my own mistakes, seeing how things work and don't necessarily work how they were designed, and seeing how workmanship plays part in the longevity of systems, and really just have been able to hone my focus on the long-term quality of a PV asset. And as we all know, they can last 20 plus years. And so we have to always think about the considerations of what we do, and how we design these systems and how we take care of during the operation phase in order to maximize the output. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's never thought of it that way, but yeah, being in the industry and watching these systems age sometimes more gracefully than others. And so yeah, we'll talk about kind of how we can be on the more graceful end of that conversation, I guess. Okay, so thank you all for the introductions. And so we're going to jump into protecting PV assets through proper equipment testing. That's our topic for today. And we're going to, as you can tell, we have varied voices in this conversation. So wanting to kind of approach it different ways, and in terms of people, Chris and his team doing it being out on the roofs and boots on the ground doing the work, Ahmed and doing the testing, and then where Robert and I kind of roll in terms of looking at doing that, helping educate people. So those are definitely some things we want to talk about. So, in short, I mean, I think we can all get on board with, this idea that better, safer performance equals more deployment. So, if we can help grow the industry, if we can help ourselves through, through these proper testing methods and getting our systems installed safer, we're going to be able to deploy more, have more deployed longer term, and being in a better position long term. So part of our conversations that we had with this group was, kind of, how do we frame this, or how do we look at this? And the term sources of truth came up. I thought it was a great way of phrasing it. And so, we have these proper tools. Obviously we need to have the right tools to do the job. And so that's where, manufacturers come in to help make sure that we are doing that. One of the things, that we've done with Megger is as they're entering into the PV market, they're wanting to make sure that they're bringing the right tools in. Are we missing any tools in the industry? So they're going out and talking with the providers, with the installers, and so trying to get those, identify what those tools are, what are the gaps, and so trying to make sure that that's part of it, the whole thing. Right along with that is, the manufacturer training. So making sure those tools are getting used properly. So we'll touch on that. Megger has some great resources out there. So, definitely talk about that. Then we get into third-party best practices. I'm just on the heels of NABCEP. Some of the folks in the audience, maybe you were at the NABCEP conference last week. And, that's just a great environment for getting out and learning the best practices, doing some, training and participating in training for all these different things. And then that last one here is interesting. And Chris, I might kind of pull you into this part of the conversation right away. In this internal institutional knowledge, excuse me. So this idea that, we have 1, 2, and 3, we're trying to set things up. And then a lot of times we have this institutional knowledge that we build within our own companies. And that's great, but it's also a little bit limiting. And so, just from your perspective, I guess, Chris, and I think the sources of truth was actually came from you, so that's why I'm gonna pull you in right away. But yeah, I guess just can you talk a little bit about how you see this working, within your own team even, and kind of being able to broaden that institutional knowledge even internally?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So, the term when I think of institutional knowledge is kind of the most senior person, and it's something you see in the solar industry is most senior person does not correlate to age, right? There's young people that have been in the industry for 5 to 10 years, just directly out of college or right out of high school. That have accumulated a great working knowledge, and so they tend to house the institutional knowledge, and so all of the new employees that tend to work underneath them are naturally gravitating towards them and saying, well, how do we do this? And so it's great to be able to pass that along, but as we see in the bigger job market, and especially around trades, is the more experienced people who have been working for a longer period of time are going to retire. Naturally, they put their time in and they earn that opportunity to relax for a bit. And so the folks carrying the institutional knowledge are not going to continue to always be there or be present for just the rounds and rounds of new generations that are coming into the industry. And so it's really important to deploy some additional training tactics to be able to kind of slingshot folks into learning and being part and gaining a stable working knowledge of the basics and fundamentals, and then starting to use that in conjunction with resources like manufacturers or equipment testing providers, and then also various industry affiliates that are putting out or kind of correlating all those best practices together to augment and start to fast track, because the challenge that we face is the industry is slingshotting in growth, but the the constraint now is the resources, the people that are there to get that work done. And so
Right.
not only do we have to move people faster along and do it the right way, we also have to look outside the industry and look at kind of the next class of working professionals and be able to start drawing them in.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think of when, institutional knowledge, I think, somewhat challenging that is an important thing. And so again, the whole NABCEP experience, people are coming there to constantly learn, and they're trying to do that. And so I think that, when you learn a tool, you may have missed a key component, or you may have like kind of missed something. And so I think having that institutional knowledge is great and it's important, but it's also, I think, critical to challenge it in order to make sure that we're always kind of staying on top of our game. Great. And so kind of the other point, you brought this up as well, and I don't need to belabor this because everybody on the call, I'm sure, is quite aware of this. Our industry is growing rapidly. So we are seeing a lot more installed capacity of solar specifically. And so that means we have, we need more and more workers. And so getting people that information is really important. So, but yeah, so I think I'll kind of leave that one there and just kind of make sure we keep moving on. So Chris, I'll just kind of have you keep going here. For what you guys are doing, kind of talk to me about, what are you guys doing to train your workforce and keep people on top of their game, and being able to make sure that the process and everything is being adhered to and being followed.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So one of the most important things is just to establish goals. We refer to it as our professional growth and development plans, and it's really aligning both the employee and the company's goals, making sure that the company is there to support those goals and clear the path in order for somebody to achieve what they're looking to achieve, and then also to make sure that our employees have a clear line of sight on what they want to be when they grow up. It's a handshake agreement between employer and employee to make sure that we facilitate, and also the effort is put into moving people through their career. And as the folks listening here well understand, as they're taking the time to learn here today, there's so much opportunity in this industry to continue growing, and not only in a broad sense, but in a depth sense. So you can continue to just focus on a bigger area, let's say development, finance development and financing projects, deploying projects through EPC work, operating projects. And then there's niches as well inside of there. Repowering has become a very prevalent requirement for the age of the solar boom. So we see this. We see the first big step is establishing goals, and then we got to set some milestones. How do we get there? And it's not as I mentioned before. You want to slingshot folks and give them the right tools, but it's not necessarily in the sense of pushing somebody faster than they're ready to run. It's really just facilitating that. And I always think back to this quote from Zig Ziglar about is it worse to train people and be concerned that they're going to leave, or not train people and have them stay, right? And so that's a big thing, and it's a real thing that I've experienced myself earlier in my career. I've heard from other folks in the industry where they don't necessarily get the training that they desire because their employer kind of thinks that they're now going to be more marketable, and therefore chances are they may leave for advancement. And so part of the goal and part of the advancement can be done internally, and it's not to control the path or the career path of employees, but it's really to facilitate it. And if you have good employees and you're bringing them in and showing them the care and love that they expect to see from an employer, from somebody that cares about them and their career, their families, and everyone attached to what they do at work, they will reciprocate. They will support their role. They will continue to advance and really take charge of the opportunity to create for them.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect of, I like that, what you were saying about, training people. And, for me personally, that's a pretty big deal. And, people might notice in this picture right away. I mean, this is Ahmed. This is we were working with Tri-Force. So we came last summer. We were doing some work together. So I think opportunities like this are an important one to put out there and trying to get the technicians kind of that training, that hands-on training. And I think, Chris, you were talking about how this was when you asked your end of year kind of your team end of year highlights of the previous year, this was one of them, it sounded like, from those guys.
Yeah, and Tri-Force was founded in 2021, so we're a relatively new business, and my partner Jesse and I have had the good fortune of working with each other in the past, so we didn't necessarily have to recreate the wheel, but we went back through a lot of things that we either hadn't done for a while, or just we're really refining on the things that worked and making sure we weren't doing things that didn't work in the past. But it was really it was really great to hear when we did bring the whole team in house at the end of 2023, and talk about what were some of the highlights. And it was unanimous that the time we spent out in the field with you and Mayfield, Megger, and Robert's team was just not only a learning experience for trying out some of the new tools that Megger has presented into the solar industry, but also just the ability to communicate with the folks that actually build and manage these tools in the field. So you have that, going back to that source of truth comment, to hear how to use something properly right from the folks who created that tool. There's no more sense of surety or confidence that you can take away from that. And I just saw that pep in everyone's step after going out there. And even for the couple of gentlemen that you see here highlighted in the picture have been in the electrical and solar industry for longer than I have. They learned from it, and the confidence that they had made them more just more enlightening to others, and again, going back to that institutional knowledge, just kind of wanting to share about that experience. So it was a fantastic time, and it definitely went a long way with our employees.
Perfect. That's great to hear. So I'm looking over here at some of the comments from the poll that we did, and so I think some of the things lead in perfectly into our next set of slides. So, well, one, is you're talking about testing. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. We all have our pictures of the horrible things that we've seen, or avoidable issues. So part of what we're wanting to talk about is we or you, being folks out in the field, are seeing things like this a lot of time. The SEL relays are they're tripped, they're not working right. We have conductors in a bad position, connectors that were improperly made. So all kinds of things that with proper testing we can hopefully avoid, and again, making our industry putting it in a better spot. So, and kind of going on the heels of what you were just talking about, Chris, in terms of the training and everything. So I want to bring Ahmed into the conversation and talking about, tool testing and training resources. So one of the things, kind of a theme I'm seeing from people's comments on the poll that we had at the start of this webinar is, how can I get, where are the resources to get trained? How can I do some of that? And what are some of the standards? How can I learn what the standards are, and relatively, I don't want to say quick and easy, because nothing's quick and easy, but how can we find those resources, implement them into our day-to-day testing and our day-to-day resources? So Megger spent a fair amount of time, resources, money, putting some of these things together. So Ahmed, can you kind of walk us through some of these things? Stitch and time has been one that's been around forever, but some of these other tools and kind of Megger's approach on getting people trained.
Yeah, absolutely. So Megger has been around for quite a long time. A company that got a test, basically, the name of a test has become the name of the company. To measure something is to do an installation test on it. And throughout that time, coming up to almost 140 years, we sell the tools, but the understanding of how to make the most out of the tools and where there are limits and how to best use them and what does that result that you're getting from the tool from the tester, what does that mean? How do you interpret it? These things are in many ways more important than the actual tool itself. So what we've done throughout our history is write reference documents such as a stitch in time. A stitch in time was originally, the first edition of it was in the 1960s. It's been updated multiple times throughout the years, and it's become such a reference point for how to do installation testing that in the NFPA 70E, the electrical code in the US, in the references in the bibliography at the back, you'll find stitch in time listed as a document that was referred to in making that code. So they are, these kind of documents do have an awful lot of value. They have an awful lot of information within them, tried and tested information that try to take a person with very basic understanding of electricity to becoming an expert at doing that kind of test, or at least get them on that way. Recently, we started a project to build electrical testing standards guide for solar industry in particular, where installation testing is just one of the many tests that need to be done in order to do a full amount of testing across an entire solar PV installation. That work is ongoing, but a large part of it is already released and available to download free of charge. A lot of these trainings that we do, reference material that we do, a lot of it is free resources for people in the industry to use, because our goal is not just to sell the tools, but to make sure that people are using these tools to the best of their ability, because as a result of that, we will have safer installations. We won't have some of those damages and fires that you saw in some of those pictures before. And also, the people who own these sites will get the most return out of that investment. Just very briefly before I hand back, I had a conversation very recently with a guy from a company similar to Tri-Force with Chris. They install and manage commercial industrial solar installations. And he was telling me that in the whole portfolio that they had of sites that they've installed and are managing the O&M for, they have one site that has been active for 5 years, and they've never had a single issue with it. They've never had a call out. They just do the regular preventative maintenance checks on a periodic basis, but in 5 years, no issues. And then other sites where they're being called out on a monthly basis with some major issue and a major headache to try to figure out where the problem is and resolve it. And I was trying to get to, well, why is that site performing so well and producing more electricity than they were expecting it to produce? And he said the team that worked on constructing it and commissioning it was well trained and well managed. And unfortunately, they lost some of the people that were in that team, but well trained, well managed teams produce fantastic work that make all the difference.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that. And again, I know I keep talking about it, but coming off the NABCEP conference, a lot of those are people who are going out of their way to get that training. And so I think it's a testament to kind of what you were just saying. A lot of people are going to take much more pride in that work, and they're going to seek out the right resources and things. So yeah, one of the things I would like to add on that electrical testing standards guide is one of the big parts of what that guide is getting feedback from the industry. So this wasn't Megger just doing this in a vacuum, saying here's how to use our tools on, how to. It's not a guide with the, it's not a sales pitch, I guess is what I'm getting at. And it was very much a collaboration. There was a lot of research, talking with folks like, what Chris and Jesse were, Tri-Force were part of that conversation, as were other people in a similar position across the country. So it's, collecting that information. So it's definitely takes time, effort, and energy to do it, and being able to put something together that is meaningful for the industry. I think a stitch in time, as you mentioned, is referenced in, other documents, and I think you said codes and maybe some standards or something, and just a testament to getting that information out there and making sure people understand, what are the tests, how do you do them properly, and the hows and the whys of everything. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Along those kind of same lines, Mayfield, we do a lot of training, and so I think there are some questions or people, as far as the responses were around training, understanding where that training comes from. So happy to talk with people offline about kind of what we're doing. We're partnering up with Megger on doing some trainings and going out in the field and getting people trained up. So that's definitely something something we're talking about. We, as a company, have really put a lot of time and effort into doing education. As I mentioned at the top, it's something that I very much, I love doing. I love interacting with people, doing this kind of education work. So whether it be in the field, whether it be online type training, somewhere in between, it's something that we also put a lot of time and effort into in order to make sure that the industry as a whole is being able to move forward on that, and have better trainings overall. So doing the testing training is part of that that we have going on. So right along with that, I couldn't kind of help myself to not do this, but mentioned, and Robert's going to talk next about some of the work that we've partnered up in doing, but wanted to talk with people. Ahmed and I just gave a 90-minute presentation, and so see if we can do it in 90 seconds here, which I know is not possible, but insulation resistance testing is a big part of it, and I know a lot of people came here wanting to learn some of these things. So let's talk a little bit about insulation resistance testing. For those that may not know it, actually, I'm gonna call on you. Because I'll let you speak to it. Kind of, what is insulation resistance testing? What are we trying to accomplish, and what is it that the tool is doing?
Absolutely. So the Megger test, as it's commonly referred to, the insulation resistance test. Really, it's a way of figuring out if you have leaks within an insulation, and leaks to ground. So the proper path of electricity is to flow through its wires, its cables, through the assets, such as the panels, and make its way to the inverter. Throughout that path, it should never find a way to ground. So what an insulation tester is there to do is, with low power, so it's not damaging the asset, it will put electrical pressure, which is a higher voltage, at least at the operating level voltage or a little higher is better, to put some pressure within the pipes, so to speak, of the flow of electricity. And if there is a leak, then the meter itself will actually show that the current is not all finding its way back. It's leaking somewhere. And the conventional way of interpreting it, instead of looking at the actual current measurement, is just take a look at the resistance value. And if that resistance value is low, you have a leak in that insulation, you have a break to ground. And if it's high, then it's holding the pressure well, and you don't have a fault to ground.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So really what we're trying to do, as Ahmed was saying, is we're we're pressurizing these conductors. In this case, we're doing this test through an array. And so this was one of the things that when we were working with Megger, we were working with folks like Chris and Tri-Force, trying to determine what are people actually doing in the field, what standards are they following, what can they do, what can't they do. And so this was, I think, kind of a big thing because we were getting quite varied answers across the industry. And so, IEC, so somebody had put in a comment about, standards and which ones to be following. IEC has a standard that is specific to PV testing and commissioning. So it's the number 62446, if that's something that you're looking for. And applying that part of as I see it, part of the issue is we have a standard that says you should do insulation resistance testing, or you should measure your conductors and you can measure your array, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. It just makes this presumption that everybody knows how to do it. If you own the tool, then you must know how to do it. So that's what I feel like Megger is really bringing to the table with that is, here's how to use the tool, here's how to use it properly, and going through, evaluating, quizzing the industry. What are you doing? What are the processes? How are you making this happen is really important for us as an industry to make sure that we're doing this consistently. So in the picture, we have a little video coming up next. We'll actually kind of, as Robert's talking about his stuff, but it's going to kind of show you the test kind of in action. But what we're looking at here is, we're doing an insulation resistance test, and we're doing it, using the tester. And here we show, we're showing a single string of modules coming to an inverter. So isolating the positive and the negative. And what we're able to do there is connect the tester to the negative leads of our home run conductors. And we're essentially pressurizing that entire array. So we're putting voltage across all of those modules, across that red positive home run wiring coming back. But we are pressurizing that line and trying to see if we have any leaks to ground. And so if we have current that is getting in contact with the ground with the racking system or the equipment grounding conductor, the meter will return a very low resistance value. So it really return something maybe only in the kilo ohms. The meter, as you're seeing on the screen, is registering giga ohms right there in the center. So that represents a very, very high resistance, which is exactly what we want. There's, again, this trying to do this in a short amount of time, a very long course. So there's a lot that goes into it. And one of the things, just being aware, because the people on the call are probably very familiar with PV systems, doing a test like this through all these modules, there's some high variability because of things like humidity. If the modules are wet, if the conductors are wet, there's a lot that goes into it. So getting the proper training, I guess, is, understanding how the tool reacts to those different environmental conditions. A little bit of water on those modules will have a big impact on what that reading is. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, understanding those things. And so, yeah, like I said, I couldn't kind of help myself to not talk about this specifically, but there's definitely a lot more to it. And I highly recommend people spend time, looking at that and kind of going through the classes that we have access to for you. Is anything else before we step away from this, Ahmed, or Chris? I mean, or Robert? I mean, open it up to all of you as we're talking about doing the tests.
There's an awful lot more to it, obviously. I mean, like you said, we did spend a 90-minute class just talking about installation testing on solar PV installations. So there's an awful lot more to it, but I think we covered the highlights pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is for folks that are out there on the front line of troubleshooting PV systems, anytime you come across a string inverter that has a arc or ground fault detected, an insulation resistance test is 9 times out of 10 required to do in order to determine the root cause and identify if the issue is still active, and then ultimately where that issue is. There are many, many nuances to the architecture of the system and what components you have in there to effectively deploy it. But if if a service provider is not using a Megger tool to address a inverter fault, an arc fault or ground fault, then they're not really exhausting all the tools and options to be able to identify that issue.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And so yeah, so definitely part of the overall troubleshooting process. And it was interesting when we were talking as right before the webinar started, we were all talking about, and the video we're about to show you, we had done some in-field testing as well, and it was interesting. So because we actually came across a section of the array that had a very low insulation resistance value. So it was like coming through and doing that troubleshooting, but the inverter wasn't returning any faults. So it's just interesting to see how these tests can actually highlight some potential problems and things that are avoidable in the field. So a comment came through from Richard. So Richard, I really appreciate that. Thank you for this. Is probably one of the biggest things that we should highlight if we're not going to be able to go through every single part of doing this test. The ratings, the voltage ratings of your module. So Richard's comment was, if the modules are rated for 1,000 volts, but the conductors are rated for 2,000 volts, 1,500 volt tests should not be performed due to potentially damaging the module. And 100% you are correct. That IEC standard I reference has some voltage values that they recommend testing at, but specific to PV systems, you should not ever put a voltage, do this test where you induce a voltage that's greater than what the modules are rated for. So if you are testing modules that are only rated at 1,000 volts, do not do your test above 1,000 volts. If you're doing older systems they're only 600 volts, that's going to be your limitation. So understanding your systems, understanding what you're working with is really important. So thanks for pointing that out, because that is a really critical part of this entire test. All right. So Robert, we've been working together a long time, and doing these, working on these. So talk to us about kind of the technical marketing angle, kind of or not angle, but the importance of it, and kind of what the folks are looking at on the screen is something that Outfit put together as part of this class that we did. So yeah, this is something that I'd love to hear from you as we're talking about all of these things.
Thank you, Ryan. As kind of the slide notes, technical marketing is the core competency of the agency. We worked with Lucas Miller, a senior engineering consultant on your team, and Brendan Brown, an interdisciplinary designer on our team, to put this together. I think that 3D models provide a lot of value to manufacturers and service providers in our industry, in part because they can be used numerous times, not just for education and training, but also on a website or for content marketing efforts. At the end of the day, I think one of the challenges that the industry faces, and my dad was an electrician, it's really hard to do all the training for workforce development in the field alone. It's ideal because people want tools in their hands, obviously, but it's just hard to replicate and to scale in that regard. So we try to focus on presenting the value proposition of the tools and the services and the solutions in a clear, compelling way. And a lot of what we're doing currently this winter, not only for Megger, but for other industry manufacturers, is working on 3D models.
Yeah, and this is something we were talking about. This was a discussion point again during our prep right before this call started. This 3D model, Chris was very much awing over this, if I could put it that way, Chris. It's really interesting to me because we at Mayfield have worked with Outfit, and we've done plenty of in-field videos and trying to get this. And this method, what we're looking at on the screen, is, to your point, Robert, almost somewhat preferable. We're able to eliminate a lot of the noise, if you will, what the things in the background that we are drawing people's attention away, or we can really focus in on a specific aspect of the tool. And even something as simple as the technician holding the tool and having to get that video shot just right is important. And so I think that I've been very happy with this and seeing this incorporated into our work.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on an obvious point. It's great. We like filming. We do testimonials and use cases of different sites around the country, but it's not easy to get it exactly right, whether it's weather contingent or access the sites. When you're doing this type of work, you can control the variables. You can demonstrate in a very clear way what we're trying to present, and that can reduce production costs for some of the work, and the stuff can be reused once you have the model in your kind of library. I think the other thing for different manufacturers and project developers, and I think Chris touched on it, I mean, we have a very technical audience, and when you're able to display how tools are being used, I actually had breakfast last week with project developer, and he was talking to me. He had to swap out an inverter on the weekend, and he was like, they're doing great to have something like this, because he's trying to reference a diagram, and of course he's done work like this before, but you're like standing out there in the rain with some printed material. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. And so it's been very, very helpful being able to do this. And like you said, once these assets are built, this was actually something we built for something else, and we did a few modifications. I'm not the one doing that work, so I want to say it's easy again, but it's already built, the base is there, and so it becomes a lot more straightforward, a lot easier to manipulate, change. And so for our class, we have a whole sequence here of what do you do from the time you open that lid up into the time you're doing this exact test. So I think, for folks like Chris here and people in the field, being able to look at this, and, they can watch it on the drive over to the site if they needed to, or something, or, as they're preparing, getting ready to do it. This is just a good way of reinforcing that and helping them. So kind of meeting people where they need to be for learning different skills.
My only other comment, Ryan, is software plays a bigger role in the industry moving forward. There's also the value of showing the connectivity between the site, the hardware, to the software, to the user. I see use cases for that. There's a lot of software platforms. I know some of our colleagues are working on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then from a practical application perspective, if you're going to have an app or a tool, a lot of these sites are out there in the desert or in remote areas, but you can have some of that stuff uploaded to an app as a reference. You're obviously not going to have like an entire guide, but you could have best practices and certain use cases. So the myriad of uses are pretty significant.
Yeah, and I think thanks for bringing that up, because I think that's a good thing. And kind of, again, scanning through some of the comments that we got at the beginning in that poll, I think one of the things that people are interested in is, along those lines of not just the education, but how to implement these things. I think that was a couple of the comments. So I guess I'm going to ask Chris and Ahmed, along those lines. Ahmed, I know Megger has some resources available. So maybe start there talking about those. And then Chris, I'd be also curious, from a user's perspective, how are you guys, you're doing this test, but how are you implementing it, collecting that data, and making sure it's utilized? So I guess, Ahmed, you have your Cert Suite software, and so I know that there's some capabilities there.
Yes. So when it comes to the software side, obviously that part of our industry is moving quite rapidly. So A lot of our instruments would have Bluetooth within them. You can connect to our software called Cert Suite. And it's a cloud-based software, so you can run it off of your phone or anything that has connection to the internet and a web browser. And you can then take the data directly into Cert Suite. You can plan your actual test sequence of what you're going to do when you go out to the site and which instrument at what time. But the bit that is, and it's a topic for another day, but something that Chris mentioned about within our industry, there's a lot of an older part of our industry in terms of age-wise, and they're retiring and aging out. I heard someone refer to it as the silver tsunami is going to hit the electrical industry or is about to hit the electrical industry. And that really, you lose an awful lot of know-how, a lot of understanding, interpreting, not just how to do the test, but what the test result means. It's interesting that we're at a time where AI is starting to find its way in almost everything. It hasn't hit our industry yet, not directly, but maybe over time, some of that heavy lifting of what should I do in this particular situation, and now that I've got the test done, what does this mean? What should be the next steps? Possibly AI could come and play a role in that on the software side of things, but we're not at that point yet. We still need people to know exactly what they're doing and exactly what they need to all the steps they need to get the job done.
Yeah. We were thinking back to we're talking about the institutional knowledge, and sometimes you got to challenge that. And this recording data is definitely been challenged. I think back of when you ask, or when you get the question asked from a client and saying, so what did you do to find the issue or to resolve the issue? And they say, we did insulation resistance tests, and everything passed. They say, okay, what was the data? And they're like, but I just said everything passed, right? And so you can have quite a large data set. Just thinking about three-phase conductors, if you're testing each phase to ground, and then if you're testing phase against phase against neutral, if you have paralleled sets, you could start to really accumulate just quite a data set just from one point source. And so you need a place to not only store that data so you can present it, but you also, I find myself when I'm out in the field, I need to see that data in order to start to build an understanding of what's going on. What avenues should I go down? How do I kind of divide and conquer? And then also preceding all that is like just prioritizing to execute on the things that are most important. So one of the fantastic things that from working with you folks out in the field last summer was having some time to talk with Ahmed and say there are some things out in the field that are specific to solar that that I don't think testing tool providers quite understand. We do a lot of there's a high volume of testing, photo taking, IR imaging, volts, amps, insulation. There's a lot of data that comes off, and on larger sites there could be hundreds of pieces of equipment out there that we have to record this. So efficiency becomes a very big factor. We've been working with a company called Solar Grade, who I had the pleasure of working with their founders, James and David. And just as we've had a direct conversation with Megger and the folks here on the call, we speak with them directly too, and share some of our challenges in the field on recording data and having an ability to present it. And they're hearing it loud and clear, and they understand what we're going through. So they're able to implement those kinds of changes to be able to record them. So that's been a big help in really bolstering kind of the effort that's out in the field. And I say this often to our employees, is that many of our clients aren't actually on the site when we perform our work. So at the end of the effort, they get two things to kind of establish the quality of the work. The first is the invoice, right? So they see how much they're going to pay, and so that kind of sets the bar. But the second one is the report, and so the information that's presented in the report, not just from the written explanation of the work that's performed, but the steps that they're performed in, the readings that are recorded, the thoroughness of the conditions that they're recording them in, the accuracy of the data, the quality of the photos, all those things come together to present, what justifies paying for a truck roll to a site or a preventative maintenance inspection. So it's really important from a service provider to establish our level of quality through our deliverables, and having the tools that make it easy to record that information makes our lives easier, and ultimately makes our clients' lives easier when they get those reports.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had an opportunity to talk to David last week, and just kind of implementing some of those things he was talking about, constantly implementing and putting those things. So definitely a plug, or a plus one for Solar Grade and kind of the work that they're doing as well. So, well, great. Well, we're getting close to the end. I do have a brief 90-second video here I wanted to show everybody, and kind of just, again, kind of wrapping up kind of what we're talking about around the training and things like that. And so kind of give you a glimpse of tying all these tools together as much as anything else. So we'll go ahead and play that so people can see it. Hi, my name is Ryan Mayfield of Mayfield Renewables, and today we're out here at this 2 megawatt ground mount PV array in order to talk to you about insulation resistance testing and how to perform those tests and interpret those results in the field, so that you can understand if there's anything that you need to do in real time in order to maintain or fix any conductors. So as the name implies, insulation resistance test is looking at the different circuits and looking at the conductors to make sure that the insulation around the wires themselves is in good working order. And so we very often use water as an analogy in our electrical systems. And so this is a lot like pressurizing a water pipe and looking for a leak. And so what we're going to do is you're going to open up in this case, our inverter, and we will isolate the different circuits. We will use our insulation resistance tester, put voltage on that wire or on that circuit that will pressurize it. If there's any bad parts of the wire, the electricity, the electrons will find a way to ground, and the meter will record that. And so we're going to be able to read the meter, look at what the actual value is of that resistance, and be able to make a determination if the conductors are in good shape or not.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes.
Did you get that done in one take?
Less than 5. So, can't remember exactly how many that took. So it's just kind of showing you, taking all of those aspects of things we showed you earlier, kind of putting it all into that course. And so I'm really excited about that. That was a project we worked with Megger on. I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited to get it in front of Chris and his guys, kind of get some feedback and hear from the industry on that. So be looking for that. So as we get to the top of the hour here, kind of some of these key takeaways of, diversifying the training approach. And we kind of talked about some of that, the third party, using different third party, leaning in on the manufacturers, quite honestly, folks like Megger who are raising their hand and saying, please lean on us, please ask us questions. And so, doing all of those things. And then, of course, this use of 3D graphics, virtual tools, really helps with that, mimic those in-field conditions, and kind of, again, as we talked about, just really hone in on what we're looking at and what we're wanting to talk about. We did show, or we did ask people in the beginning of the class if they were interested in learning more. If you didn't get that opportunity, or if you want to take a look, you can use this QR code to get more information on that specific course. And then I wanted to get to this specific slide and be able to leave this up for a moment with all of our information and, you know, give an opportunity to our guests to kind of close things out. One thing I will note, there was another question that come in. Newt, great to see you. At this point, you know, we're running low on time, so doing arc fault testing, you know, I'll have to take that one offline. Definitely much more difficult than doing ground fault testing. So, but yeah, definitely can take that one offline and talk with you about that. So yeah, Ahmed, Chris, Robert, I guess any parting thoughts as we wrap up this conversation?
I guess I'll start. What we've covered here is just kind of highlights about the need for training and where you can find some of these resources for training. As Megger, we're doing our absolute best to get information out there without any kind of barrier to that information, regardless of whether you use the Megger tools or not. We want people to get it right and be able to do their job more efficiently and safely.
Great. Yeah, appreciate that. Chris?
Yeah, just thanks again. Great opportunity to work with you guys again. You know, just a shameless plug for Tri-Force Energy. If you're deploying commercial, industrial, or utility scale solar in New Jersey, New York, or Pennsylvania, and you're looking for a team that's aligned with the long-term quality of the system, whether it's to conduct quality control inspections throughout the build of the project, you know, either perform or support the performance of commissioning. And then once you place those assets into operation, looking for a strong team with a lot of field knowledge, both from the design all the way through the operations perspective. You know, we'd love to be you know, part of your you know, core team's support system in preventative maintenance and troubleshooting. So you know, feel free to email me at chris.grablutz@triforceenergy.com. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, or yeah, visit our website, triforceenergy.com. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And big ringing endorsement for you over at Tri-Force. So I echo what you just said. So people need that service. They should seek you out.
Thank
and then
you.
Robert, you got any final words of wisdom for us?
I should probably, you know, talk about the agency, but truth be told, I'm just excited to be on this AMA with somebody else from New Jersey, because that's where I grew up, and I had to move out west to get into the solar industry 15 years ago. So it's pretty great to see the Northeast and all the development and solar there. But no, we're really excited to do this work, and we have several 3D modeling projects coming out this spring. So happy to do it, and good to be with everyone today.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody's time out in the audience. I appreciate our members of our panel here as well. So thank you all very much. Look forward to speaking to you next time when we do our AMA again in April. So thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.